Hello. I am an advertising man. And I am here to sell to you a product and or service. This product and or service has many features that will benefit you and your life in a variety of ways. It also requires fewer units of currency to purchase than other, similar, products and or services. According to research done by some experts, this is the best version of this product and or service available on the market by a margin of a large percent. There are also many testimonials from fellow humans who have purchased this product and or service. They will now provide their opinions, which you should take as proof of what I say.
I have strong positive feelings towards this product and or service. It had many desirable features that greatly benefited my normal, human, life.
Of all the products and or services I have purchased, this was the one I most greatly appreciated. Its desirable traits were appreciated much, and I found much appreciation in this product and or service.
If you wish to purchase this product and or service, please contact the company that provides it by calling their telephone number or visiting their website. You are statistically unlikely to regret making this decision. Thank you.
Thank you to for sponsoring this episode of Paul and Bradley's Psychic Cafe. And now, on to the show. And once more into the breach, dear friends, we go with another episode of Paul and Bradley's Psychic Cafe, coming towards you like a great stampede of horses trampling across the fields. Can you feel it? Can you feel the clattering of their hooves, shaking the ground? Soon the great stirring is upon you, and all of a sudden there you are in the midst of them. There it all is, clamouring around you, a great stampede of information and thought coming towards you. My God, it's been a while, hasn't it? Hi. I'm very excited to bring you this episode of Paul and Bradley's Psychic Cafe, as you might have just heard, because today I have a good friend of mine, Patrick Bayele. Patrick, a writer, a poet, actor, wordsmith. I mean, an absolute, just radiates king energy, preacher energy, a spiritualist. I first encountered him when I saw one of the shows that he was in at the National Youth Theatre, in which he was absolutely fantastic. And we then met later on during a Zoom course for playwriting and coming up with collaborative projects, in which he awarded the entire group, him and the other organisers, a £10 Amazon gift voucher. Which, by the way, Patrick, thank you for that. I bought a Doctor Who DVD with it. Fantastic. 10 out of 10. But yeah, and I brought him on just to talk about like his writing work. And from there, it became something so much more than I could have imagined. We talked about God, poetry, the importance of staying awake in our modern world, and it's a rare feeling when you find someone who talks your sort of same metaphorical language, and that's how I feel with Patrick. We may have slightly different accents, but we're talking the same language, and it's wonderful. Yeah. And I was particularly impressed by his poetry, which you will actually hear at the beginning of this podcast, because I wanted him to read it as a nice little introduction. So, without further ado, let us present to you the man, the myth, the legend, the wonderful Patrick Bayele. Oh my God, I hope I pronounced that right.
It's time.
Whispers within a chamber. Songbirds in a daze from the glowing lake. A reflection plunged in liquid glass. Shatterproof, yet intangible. You won't make it home, said the hunter to the lion. See, the way we run from the call, as if it cries blood pooling in the crevice of a twisted lip. I've forgotten how to dance. I no longer remember how to paint pictures of revelry, equipped with a monochrome palette of my own anxiety. I almost stumbled up the climb, nearly impaled myself on the spikes of my ambition, grazing my knee, seeking a break time plaster to seal my woes, to hide them from the moody cloud. Breathing in my bedroom, intoxicated by a rift in hope, singing the anthem of a nightmare. See, I've forgotten how to dance, but I still remember how to cry. The cursed surge of the past, you're not welcome here. Yet here I am, submerged in a bottomless endeavor, reinstating the importance of breathing, falling in love with the terror. The terror. The error misperceived. Shame received in an elixir. What was once a Calpol potion is now the prayer of a redeemer. The utterance of a dreamer. So you were not born to die. You were born to break color. To breathe, not to sigh, to believe. To scale the mountain of trauma that the moody cloud said was insurmountable. My home is where the light is, said the lion to the hunter. That's why the lake glows, you see, to help us find our way to the dream.
And you just kind of memorized that whole thing.
Now, I'm not going to lie, bro. I'll give you a PDF still. No way I can memorize those buzz. I'm not that sick. I'm not that sick.
Oh, you had me utterly convinced. You were. Oh.
Nah. Yeah, I performed it.
Yeah,
I had to get it.
I saw your performance on Instagram, and that was kind of that was one of the things that made me want to just have this conversation, because it was, you perform with such passion and such energy. It's like electricity, and also I just love that writing. It was flowing. It was lyrical, and I'm just interested. Well, let's just start on that particular piece. Where did that come from?
So that poem, I think that poem was really a collection of thoughts almost, but also it was the zenith of a particular journey of thought. That's what it was, in the sense that all these years, in terms of like, what am I doing? What am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? Was really encapsulated in this notion of breaking color. I wrote this poem on Easter Sunday, and I was sitting by this lake, this lake that glows because it was, the sun was beaming off it. And I was thinking about, what am I doing, in terms of like me being an artist, in terms of me like trying to fulfill a vocation. I was really trying to pin down like, why am I doing this work? And so as I was just sitting there, that reflection plunged in liquid glass. I was seeing myself, my reflection in that lake, and that's what it appeared to me. That's what it appeared to be. Shatterproof yet intangible. It can't be broken yet. I can't put my hands on it. And it's these notions, these images, which really just kind of honed in on this idea that this legacy, this art that I'm creating, is not necessarily about. It's not necessarily about me trying to forget things or trying to get over certain things. The reason that I make art, the reason that I'm embarking on this journey is to create a new world, to create a new understanding of who we are, to break color in that instance. Color being this kind of, we have typifications of color, certain notions of color, certain boundaries of color. I mean, there's a multitude of colors out there, but there is a certain selection which is somewhat finite. Whereas to break color is to completely redefine what is possible in an artistic and a human sense. And to embark upon that path, to break color, is to endure hardship. It is to suffer. It is to stumble up that mountain. It is to conquer that mountain, which the moody clouds was insurmountable. That's what it means to break color. It's to persevere in the face of utmost adversity for the sake of something greater than yourself. And me and my relationship with God and the way my poetry and my art really is that fine line, that avenue, that bridge between those paths. That was me having a conversation with God saying, bro, what am I supposed to be doing? And God said, like, you're already doing it. You just got to believe in yourself, and you got to trust yourself, and you got to think to yourself, where do you want this art to take us as a people? And for me, the dream is this, I wouldn't call it utopian. That's somewhat this saturated term of like, everyone's okay. More a thing of the dream being this realm of acceptance and forgiveness and trust and peace and connection and vulnerability. Art being a realm, or art being an avenue into that realm of utmost self-acceptance and self-actualization, of breaking color. So yeah, that's me, shooting from the hip. That's what the poem is about.
I'm so glad I chose you as a guest. This is great. You basically just composed another poem just by answering the question. I've got to say, I am going through that exact. I've been going through that exact dilemma myself very recently, because I think we're in a state where the arts are not considered. We've kind of lost the point of art.
Yeah.
We're in this sort of, obviously, there's the STEM subjects, which are very much, important and very much essential. But we're almost I think we're almost at risk of losing ourselves to a kind of mechanistic, rigid world where imaginations are kind of stunted. And
I think that, and of course, with the STEM subjects, I was always, I wasn't, physics, me and physics didn't get along. Me and maths had a love-hate relationship. English was what I was proficient at. And I think that, I don't know, I have this, I'm becoming a lot more modest about that now. Like, I have a gift when it comes to words and poetry and language and imagination. I just do. I don't know why, I just do. And I think that, and that's just something I talk about with my partner all the time. I always think about, we all know what art does. We all know the functions of art in terms of to entertain, to enlighten, to inform, to challenge. But what is it supposed to be? What is its divine ultimate function? And I don't think that many people consider it as, I think actually, I'll take that back. I think many people do consider it as the following, but as within many artistic circles, this definition of art isn't the widely held belief, which is that it is to heal. Art as a method of healing, art as a method of spiritual reclamation, art as a form of beginning again and becoming. That, for me, is its ultimate function. Because if you have the power of imagination to be able to create a world, create characters, create language, create devices, which can not only invigorate your spirit, but actually depict a version of yourself of which you can step into and abandon and let go of these experiences and these traumas which have defined us up until this point. If we can use art for that function as the ultimate tool of self-acceptance, then that is, for me, breaking color. That's what it's all about. That's why I think when we say maybe our imaginations are being stunted, it's because we're not challenging our perceptions or our artistic impulses to go that far. I think we're happy with just entertaining each other, or creating really cool spectacle, which is, of course, like, we're here for it. But it gets to a point where that gap between who we are and who we could be hasn't been crossed for a long time. And we try to cross it through politics, we try to cross it through medicine, we try to cross it through socio-political engagement, global efforts, domestic efforts. But for me, art is that bridge. And that's what I think I realized writing that poem, is that for me, art is about that journey. Art is about saving the world, to be honest. And it's a mighty ambition, but with a lot of self-care and self-regulation and self-acceptance in my own right. That is something which I would die for.
Yeah. You mention the divine quite a lot. You mentioned God and all that stuff. What's your relationship to that? Are you a spiritualist or a Christian?
Yeah. I mean, so that's the thing. I've been brought up in a Catholic family, and at first I always believed in God by default. It was like, yeah, God, like, yeah, Jesus, yeah, cool. It was only in the first 2 years the last 2 years, where I started to really develop a relationship, like a dialogue with God, not just a understanding of him, but a well thought out dialogue, a consistent correspondence. And so for me, kind of going back into the Bible, going back into that path, going back into Jesus, I was thinking, who is this guy? Does this guy exist? What does this guy mean? And then for me, in terms of trying to reconnect with God in this period of really, of real self-contempt, I had to really release myself from all of these negative thought patterns. And turning back to Catholicism was that avenue. I felt that being saved by God in that instance gave me a chance to look at my art and say, right, how can I use this art to help people heal, to help people create their own relationships with God, to create their own relationships with themselves, to find peace, That's what it was for me. And I think that when God gave me peace, I felt that it was a duty of mine to really offer and instill peace amongst all of us, amongst different creeds, amongst different religions, sexualities, across the board, to help us find peace within ourselves as, I suppose, the precursor to the dream.
I'm interested. So you mentioned art as a tool of healing. I mean, I suppose I'm trying to cross over with this is quite. I mean, this is like what 10 minutes in, and this is already getting. We're getting big. Yeah. And it's only going to get bigger from here. We're crossing over. I think a common thread that I told myself, because I'm very big on talking about spirituality as relationship to art, and I sort of weird, abstract, occultic ideas and that kind of stuff. And I swore to myself, I'm not going to say that today. I'm going to give the audience a break, but screw it. This time, this one is too good to ignore. So how do you, in your eyes, what is the intersection between God and art? How do they relate? How can it heal?
So I'll answer this question in stages, but I'll be as short as I can. So this definition of art I may have got from someone else, or it may be an accumulation of different definitions. But for me, to be an artist, or art itself, is an expression of excellence. Whatever medium you pick, that is the artist's weapon of choice. So if art is an expression of excellence, and we have been created by God as an expression of excellence, then we are art in that sense.
Oh my God.
So for art to create is basically not only an expression of excellence, but it is an evocation of the God which is in all of ourselves. So to be an artist is to essentially helm your responsibility as a creator in the eyes of God.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of like a theory that I've been brewing for a while now, that I've felt it's a bit nuts, but I kind of feel like we're all just a giant extended metaphor, like in some great cosmic play. We're in the same way. I don't know. Like I've got Moby Dick right next to me. So Herman Melville struggling with his theories of, his thoughts about, like, I don't know whether this is actually what you went through. I don't know the man, but the ideas of, like, trying to work out ideas of, like, man's relationship to nature and the savagery of the wild and all that stuff, creates a story about a man trying to hunt a giant whale. And of course, the people in the story don't know anything else. As far as they're concerned, it's just a giant whale. But on our level, we can see that it's actually, there's broader themes going on here, and it's like ideas trying to work themselves out. And I suppose we're like the way to we're a similar expression from some higher entity. So God to you, what is God to you? What's your relationship? What's the chat like?
Yeah, I think it's just weird. I think God is the air that I breathe. God is the light which illuminates the path. God is the language I speak. God is the food that I eat. God is the God is everything. And I know that it's a very, like, kind of back of my pocket answer, but I think it's one of those things where because my relationship with God is so all encompassing, everything on a molecular level to a macro level is inherently linked to God for me. The way I approach it through my lens. And so my relationship with God, the chat I have, the conversation that we have, is really about me. It's this whole thing of God letting things happen, certain opportunities coming to my knowledge, certain relationships and bonds. For instance, our chat now and how we met over the past couple months. God kind of saying, this could happen if you want. And then me saying to God, but do you want this to happen? And God says, the choice is yours, which is where free will comes in. And so then when we make it happen, we can look back in retrospect and think, so these are the fruits of my trust in God. These are the fruits of my labor in Christ. And God says, you see what I did there? So my relationship with God is really just me attempting to trust in everything that I don't know in order to create something greater than myself. And in doing so, my trust in God and my capability as an artist and my strength as a human being increases, and my scope of compassion and forgiveness multiplies, and my peace is deepened. And this is just a process of becoming. I suppose the process of becoming is really just a process of investing my trust in God to the point that I create things or build things with other people that transcend our rational capacities, to the point that we can see the world through something so much greater than us, see the world through something so much greater than ourselves, and find peace in the notion that in giving it all to giving it all to our Creator, we can create something which can in turn give us more to create. There is this relationship of creator and created working together to not only find peace, but to transcend.
I really like that idea, and oh my god, there's so much. I feel like this whole podcast, it's like I was planning a more structured conversation maybe, but now it's just become like spoken word poetry, just in dialectic.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I like that. I like that.
yeah, but right, okay, so many things. I mean, I love that relationship to God idea, because obviously, I know there's a lot of Christians who say it's a very personal thing. I'm personally not a Christian, although
Yeah, I get
I have had communications, and in like I've studied the Bible to certain capacities. I'm interested,
Yeah,
but
of course.
I like dabbling. I can never
Yeah,
stick
yeah,
to one
100.
thing. But
Yeah, 100, I
I
hear that.
I know it's a very personal thing, but I love the idea of this co-creation of the world.
Mm,
Like, it reminds me, there's some texts, some very early texts, that describe the human race as God's brother, not
mm,
not child, their brother.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
and I love that idea that we are actually the co-authors of reality. And I find there's so many cases where I will be, if I'll be thinking something, like, for example, I'm terrified of driving a lot of the time, and the other day I had to drive to a friend's house. It wasn't that far, but I built it up in my head, and I was thinking, oh God, what if I go the wrong way? What if I get lost? All this stuff. And so I put the address in the sat nav, I follow it, and I get there, and then as I get there, I realise I've put in the wrong address.
Oh my
And the
God.
exact thing that I thought was going to happen happens. But
Yeah.
at that exact moment, I was like, yeah, but this is no real danger, is it? The actual location I wanted was only a few meters up the road, and instantly it was like, I was like, okay, Paul, you got a brain in your head. You got a brain in your head. You know how to work the car. You're fine. And as I was driving, I just started laughing, and for some reason, and this happens a few times in my life, I just looked up and pointed at the sky and be like, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, so yeah, in response to that, human being God's brother, I think there's a lot of water to that, in the sense that, I don't know, because the way that, the relationship of God has been, kind of discussed in ancient texts, Bible included, or even cross-cultural, cross-faith, there is this idea that it's like God's all the way there, and humans this little tiny dot, which is just at the behest of the natural world, and must submit, or face destruction, damnation. But this idea of humanity being God's brother, it's non-hierarchical for a start, or at least less hierarchical. And but I think that's a far more accurate description in terms of us being conduits of grace. Because if we were in this very marginal position of like just absolute subservience, then these beautiful acts of grace and compassion, these miracles that we have the power to really bring into fruition, wouldn't exist. Simple acts. If you look at so many political figures, I always look at Martin Luther King as someone as a typical example of someone who embodied grace to the extent that he was able to really usher in a new dawn of reality. You look at all these instances of grace and light and passion, and you look and you can feel God in his words, and the fact that he reverberates in history through past and present. It's that whole, when we embody that grace, you can no longer see a human as just this little plankton at the bottom of this whale, but you see humans as genuine, fully formed, fully made accomplices of God, companions of Christ. And I can't remove that image out of my head. I won't, because I've experienced it too. I've experienced it. In terms of and in terms of that second example as well, it was yeah, I know. It's and I think what that was an encounter with your own inclinations, an encounter with your own fears. And I think that moment where you look to the sky and think, I see what you did there, that's that moment of grand grand scheming. When you look at it in the grand scheme, you think, right, oh, I see. So this was a little episode of thought, a little episode of action, a little episode of behavior, which is put together, become more than the sum of their parts, and allow me to hone in and to examine who I am in this moment, who I was at that moment, and where I could be in the next moment.
Yeah. And I love those. I love those moments because they're like if reality is like a dream, which I kind of think we are, as I say, extended metaphor. It's kind of those moments when all of a sudden you wake up just a little bit, just enough, just not enough to like exit like the Matrix or whatever. Although I think, but like just enough to be like, that's what this is all about. Because I think it's a fascinating thing. And I love what you said about Martin Luther King, because actually this is so weird. One of my major political heroes, one of my personal ones, is Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, because I think he's a fascinating example of someone who was channeling, I think, what I like to call constructive chaos. When everything, those moments when, as you say, things just get blown up. And but he didn't even really know what he was doing. Like, because he was just like, hey, the church is gaining a bit too much. It's got a monopoly on truth. Maybe we should all study the Bible. And of course, he tapped into the new technology of the printing press and distributed Bibles everywhere, and was like, now it's your turn to make your own decision. And of course, but the thing was, the thing I find funniest was that he thought that what would happen is that after everyone read the Bible, they would all mutually come to the decision that it was his particular version of the interpretation of the Bible that was actually the correct one. Whereas actually what happened was he caused, like, there were splinter groups and splinter groups and splinter groups going out and out and out and out and out, until eventually you had, like, a chain reaction of events which led to the Renaissance, which led to like a rebirth and a flourishing of human thought. And he could not have possibly predicted that any of that was going to happen. And yet, just by going by what he was compelled most to do, he caused, like a bee pollinating the garden, didn't know what it was doing, but just inadvertently. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because that whole Renaissance period, and I know Martin Luther, and I know there's certain kind of, I wouldn't say versions, but ultimately certain sections of the Christian faith, particularly that Lutheran branch. I think that's the term, Lutheran. I can't remember.
I think so.
Something like that. But I look at that, and I think these it's interesting because I kind of think about, you look at someone like that and you think, was that in God's plan? Did God intend for this man to be able to go up against it and to really and to speak his truth, and to have that bravery and that courage to be able to completely rupture common thought, to completely rupture the common paradigm of what it meant to believe in Jesus, to be a part of that parish. And you look at and how that's kind of completely, I wouldn't say, as you say, I wouldn't say decimated, but that kind of constructive chaos, in the sense that it has led to a tumultuous period of complete reckoning, but also complete reclamation and complete reformulation of ideas of spiritual, political thought. And I think sometimes, was he a conduit, or was he a renegade? And but I think ultimately, I think whether we, I think that's something I'm really trying to investigate as well. That relationship between being a conduit for God, but also being a rebel against the status quo.
Yeah.
And how do you rectify that? How do you reconcile that?
I mean,
and I think that is for pure faith. It's pure faith, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's where I think a lot of art comes in handy, because although art to me is a dabble in the realm of ideas. I believe that ideas exist in a separate landscape than the physical plane. That they that everyone inside them has within them an entire universe, and we all share these kind of interconnected universes. And it's you go into there, and if you're like, there are some artists who when they're really good, they're able to almost create, go beyond and pull out new thoughts, new concepts, new ideas. And I feel that's what we're desperately in need of nowadays, because we're in a position where, for the last God knows how many years, depending on where you want to draw the line, we're in a situation where the sort of, scientific materialist capitalist view of the world it's created many great, material goods and many great material leverages. People are, globally speaking, a lot better off. But at the same time, on a spiritual level, on a psychological level, we're in a far poorer state, because we've tallied up everything. We're in a situation where that kind of, it's become its own kind of I don't want to say its own kind of religion, that sounds a bit corny, but it's become its own sort of it's a bubble of thought that doesn't permit anything else in. And I think we've got to pop the bubble. We've got to we've got to do another Lutheran explosion, if you will.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. When I was in third year uni, we were learning about the Enlightenment and Age of Reason and Romanticism, blah, 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 blah. And then I used to run around as if I knew what I was talking about and say, oh, the Enlightenment is the worst thing to happen to humanity. Oh my God. The death of God, Nietzsche. Oh, what's happened? And to be honest, it's not that I don't think that's true, but of course it's so much more layered than that.
Nietzsche's a severely misunderstood philosopher.
I think I've dabbled with his work enough to be able to kind of see where he stands roughly, but even where I think he stands is probably 2 miles off. All I do know is that we are in this kind of this psycho-spiritual age, which is deprived due to this reliance on the empirical, on the rational, and in us really adhering to these all-pervading thoughts of rational enterprise, of the Übermensch, in a sense. We are beginning to, or we've made a willful decision to say, we don't need God anymore. We are the apex predators. We are the epitome of what it means to exist. We are everything and anything, and I just can't. And that idea has led to so many crises and so many tragedies, and many benefits as well. But also, I think that those benefits have not been enough to suffice for the depths that we have plummeted to as a people. I think art is the only thing that can rescue us from ourselves.
I wouldn't even be so sure. I think the way I see it personally is like, yes, we have kind of your video's back now. Yes, we have kind of reached a situation of we are the apex predators, but at the exact same time, I think we've kind of completely devalued ourselves as a species, because you've got that kind of, I've seen enough people going, oh well, we're just a virus on the face of the earth. Humanity should just go extinct and pass on the evolutionary torch to the machines and that. And I think no, for God's sake, you can't. Machines, again, machines great things. If an AI intelligence ever does gain self-awareness, if it hasn't already, then I'll be delighted to talk to it. But it's it's the result of a sort of tallying up. Well, computers can think, X times faster. It can calculate X times faster, and it can. But machines will never. Machines can't feel awe. Machines can't feel wonder. You can't program. You can't program love. You can't. It'll have emotions, but entirely different emotions, new emotions. And I think there is something unique about humanity in our connection to an external sort of, external and internal at the same time, sort of a force. So I sorry. I mean, I feel like the end of this, the end of this sort of. And it's also a kind of a mechanistic mode of thought. We've entered that, and and we need to, in order to evolve as a species, I think we've got to drop so many ideas, like the kind of mechanistic tallying, like the idea of efficiency above all else. I think even maybe of I'm going to quote Nietzsche here, going beyond good and evil, but into a state of not this is good, this is evil, more like just an integration, what Jung might call the individuation of the species.
Yeah, that's the one.
The integration of the shadow.
Shadow integration, that's the one. And I think it's true though, because we talk about shadow integration, we say, just integrate a shadow, the coalescing of the good and evil, cool, cool, I get it, let's do it. But I think what we have lost ultimately is the ability to be present.
Oh yeah.
This loss of the ability to be present has completely scuppered our relationship with God, with nature, with each other, and ultimately ourselves. I was on a holiday last week in the Peak District, and my God, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, first of all, England was host to such beautiful vistas.
Right?
But also, yes. But yes. It's absolutely, yes. But also, I didn't know that. I wasn't off the grid, but I was completely disconnected from socio-political affairs, life as it was. I was just gazing over these hills, undulating, miles and miles of majestic landscape. And it was one of those ones where we look at maximum profit, we look at efficiency, and you kind of examine these things through the context of climate change, and examine these things through the context of capitalism and institutional oppression. You look at all of these things, which are all linked down to this common denominator of hamartia, of this tragic flaw, in the sense where it's like, we just don't know how to be alive. Full stop. We don't know what it means to breathe. We don't know what it means to look into someone's eyes. We don't know what it means to have someone else look into our eyes. So in order to make up for our ineptitude of being human, we decide to propagate these rampant ideologies to bolster ourselves and to completely exceed the scale of expectation through industrial revolutions, to put men on the moon and Mars, but not to look at third world countries or look at the Middle East and invest all these resources onto the lives that are being burned here. We can't do it. Why? Because to be present is to feel the natural world, to feel your emotions, to feel love, to feel awe, to feel wonder. And also to feel is to admit that you are not only to a certain degree weak or flawed, but also to admit that you are mortal and that this life is fleeting. And in order to run away from that life, in order to completely mitigate this sense of the inevitable, what do? Everything we've done for the past 250 years, which is run. And we can't stop living, breathing, feeling until we stop running away from who we are. And
Yeah.
what we're running away from ultimately is God. And until we stop and we look at God and we let ourselves have that encounter with God and we say, this is who I am. I am who I am, God. And you don't even have to say sorry, because God forgave us ages ago, years ago. God says, look, I love you anyway, bro. Just let me love you. That's all. That's all I'm asking. But instead of that, because to be loved by God is to admit that we have only so many days and that we are mortal. But until we can do that, until we can accept that grace and accept that love, we will forever be running towards progress and running towards capitalist monopolies and success, but we will always be running away from the truth.
And I mean, it hurts. It hurts to be present. I mean, I remember when I first started meditating.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing it for 2 years now. Within the first few months, it was like, all of a sudden one night got a knock on the door. All right, time to sort out your depression problem. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh no, do I have to? Yep. You've stayed still for 2 weeks. Now it's here. Come on. And it's always, being present is like, it's simultaneously being still, but there's also a lot going on. There's a hell of a lot going on, because I feel like every week is just another layer, another layer, as like sort of a Buddhist kind of, and this is gone, and this is gone, and this is gone, and this is gone. And I find, as time's gone by, I just cannot. I feel far more sensitivity towards the kind of background radiation, because you're sort of. I don't know. I suppose it's only when you go indoors that you realise how hot it was outside or whatever. Because you. I can't watch the news anymore. I just don't. I don't read it. I don't watch it. I barely watch television.
Yeah.
Because it's just like I see myself. I can feel my thumb scrolling through Reddit, and then just that bit in my head just goes, "No, you're getting roped back into the game again. You're getting pulled back into that reality.
That machine.
The machine. Yeah. It's always trying to pull you in." And do you know what? Another fascinating moment of grace, I find.
Yeah, go on.
I'd been hit with a lot of climate change anxiety, just a lot, and I was petrified. And I was scrolling through, of all places, spiritual subreddits.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I don't know the thing.
Yeah, there's spirituality subreddits, plenty of them, and I was scrolling through them, trying to find like one of them. It'll be all right because the dawn of Aquarius is coming, and that kind of like some kind of prophecy that I could just invest in for the minute. And I didn't get anything, because if you're doing spirituality, your first thought isn't, and now I'm going to write about it on Reddit. The people who go to those kind of things are people who are in the dark night of the soul. In other words, people who are doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. And so it was just full of people in crisis. And then, and then suddenly I came across one post, and all it said was, "Have you ever considered that if you stop paying attention to them, the bad things will go away?" And I was like, yeah, good point. And I deleted Reddit. Deleted Reddit, struck the news off. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, good point. I just stopped, like that episode of The Simpsons when all the billboards go mental. Just don't look. It's trying to get your attention.
I don't know what episode that is. It reminds me of you know what? It does remind me of a film, as you said that. I don't even remember the name of the film now. But I haven't seen it, but just the concept of this guy who's got glasses. He's got these glasses. They Live. That's the one. They Live. Yeah. When he puts his glasses on, he's always seeing these next things on a billboard, and everyone's an alien and all this and all that, and only he can see it. And I think to a certain degree, what you described It's almost as if, well, it's interesting what you describe, Paul, because I feel that on these journeys, I think I tend to try and veer away from the word enlightenment, because it's like,
It's very much, you know, if you utter it, it's like, and now I've arrived.
yeah, as if this is some kind of. There's a series called The Midnight Gospel on Netflix, which you need to watch if you haven't watched it already.
I
Have you
love
watched
it.
it?
I love it
Oh
so
yeah,
much.
oh man,
The
yeah,
final
yeah.
episode always makes me well up.
Honestly, probably one of my favorite TV shows in a long time. But yeah, and there's you know, we talk about enlightenment as if it's a stage that could be reached, where if you study enough and if you challenge yourself enough and if you endure enough suffering, then you will become enlightened. Whereas like, nah, like
You're there.
I think
You've already if you're there, if you're present, enlightenment.
yes, exactly. Boom, literally. And I think when we try to cultivate a spiritual awareness, which for me, if I was to define enlightenment, I would say it's an acute, heightened state of spiritual awareness. If we try to endeavor to that place, it's almost like we put on those glasses and then we begin to see through these machinations and these systems, and we start to see the aliens which are crawling underneath our skin. And these aliens are not necessarily life forms from Mars. They are really the remnants and the specters of trauma, of doubts, of fear, of and
Sorry, that's you basically just said what was in my head.
yeah. Bro, I'm there. And but yeah, and I think, but what's interesting is that, you know, it's almost as if what you described with that subreddit, it's like, take the glasses off, to take them off, throw them bin, stamp on them. But then, as much as we don't want it to be true, those bad things are still going on.
Yeah.
They're still going on. So it's like, I think for me, the spiritual journey, the path to becoming, is to keep those glasses on, and it's to say, what can I do about it now? That's where the art comes.
I mean, I suppose I might have said it a bit. What I meant was like, it's not that you. Again, this is, I think, one of the fears I had. If I stop watching the news, then I'll just become a complacent. You know, I won't care about anything. I'll just be obsessed with myself. I found it's more like I'm not being pulled in a million directions, because I don't, personally, about climate change, I don't know what to do. I don't have power, and I mean, joining protest groups and all that stuff, I mean, okay, there aren't that many going on in Braintree. I'd have to travel up to London to join, and it's not what's in my gut, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it's art. It's having conversations. It's talking. It's trying to bring out new ideas, and it's like, I don't. When you're, I think there is a danger, if you will, when you put on the glasses, that all you see are the signs, and you forget that there are actually people also walking around. Yeah. Or like you can just become so sort of, oh my god, here's a sign, and here's a sign, and here's a sign, and here's a sign, and it's all coming in so fast. It's all just, and I think at a certain point you have to kind of just go, okay, I know it's there, I know these are bad things, but I've got to, just for the sake of being able to think, you've got to take a step aside and just breathe for a moment, and I find now I'm not paying attention, and also because you're not getting. Because, I mean, the news has a certain, not agenda, that's the wrong word, but it has a certain way of telling the story that may not be helpful. And I find if you, like, being able to just not getting pulled into the panic game, not getting pulled into the constant gnawing sense of, you know, it's here, it's coming, this is a threat, and just being able to actually enjoy life it won't make you, like, being miserable is not going to help anyone.
Yeah, it's true. I like that a lot. I think And I think it's true, because being miserable isn't going to help anyone. And I think enduring suffering or enduring hardship, through the journeys that we go on, through the lives that we live, is that is, I suppose, the avenue into not only saving yourself, but understanding how we can be saved through our own actions and through our own creation. And of course, we look at climate change, and there are, of course, it's such a
it's scary.
It's one of those things where you look at it and you think, okay, I'm going to stop eating meat, or I'm going to get a bicycle, or I'm going to wear sustainable fashion. And then sometimes we fall in our word. I can't be vegetarian for more than a week. I'm trying to go vegetarian, but these are just little things.
So bad. I'm won over by all the arguments for vegetarian and veganism, but I'm slightly held up by the fact that all of my favourite food is meat.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it so much. I can't.
Six wings and cheese. Like, I can't.
Ah!
I don't operate without either two, easily accessible at any point. I don't know. But then again, that's my and that's where there's, on the Bible recently, I was reading this passage, Romans 12:2, and St. Paul, he says, don't conform to the pattern of this world. Be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Very popular passage, very well-renowned passage. And when I look at that, and when I read that, I think to myself, there are certain patterns in this world which are easily identifiable, but how do I renew my mind? How do I start again in that sense? And I was watching the news this morning, and there was a recent tragedy in terms of a US drone strike, which had killed 10 people by accident. Wrong information. And, it was going into this, it was really, unraveling the story, the tragedy, the horror of the civilians. And when the segment ended, the anchor literally just looked up to the camera and said, "And now time for the weather." And it's like, he literally, I couldn't be any more like, that's what I witnessed. And it's these methods through which we move through life. And the news is almost it almost creates a structure of how we process emotion. It reflects how we process emotion. We witness something really bad. We don't let it sit within us. We just acknowledge it and move on. And that's kind of very much in the same pattern of modern life. The news reflects that pattern of modern life in the sense that we are so used and so well adjusted to not feeling, to just going on, particularly living in London, where everything's go. You're replying to an email and you're finishing a sandwich on the way to an audition. And for me, to not conform to the pattern of this world is to be able to, as you say, to have that ability to disconnect and to live in that moment, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind in this instance is to be able to witness all these things, to come back into the modern world and say, okay, I am not helpless. I may be one human amongst many, but I do not subscribe to this view that, we mean nothing in the grand scheme, all this, all that, this pessimistic, quasi-nihilistic idea that it's like, we mean nothing in the grand scheme. Like, no. We mean everything in the grand scheme.
Yeah.
If we choose to believe it as such. So renewing of the mind is really about looking at these patterns, looking at these systems, looking at these concepts and these ideas and thinking, not what can I do, but it's what will I do? What will I do? Saying can is almost preparing ourselves for a certain set of conditions, whereas I can if, or I can but, whereas I will is like, I will.
Yeah, and I think I love what you said about the news, because it does, again, the reason I kind of turned away from it all, I know what's wrong with the world, right? I mean, I get it, and it's, it's a fairly, anyone who's got any kind of sort of surface reading of the state of things will know that there's a big sort of mega problem going on here. But but you're bombarded. It's like, you know, here's a bad thing, here's a bad thing, here's a bad thing, and you're being bludgeoned with it over and over again. And you know those videos you'll see sometimes, or just those phenomena when a lion, for instance, has been in a cage its whole life, and then it's let out and it just walks around in that same square formation. I feel like I could just feel like that's what news is doing to my brain. That it's kind of bludgeoning me into a complacent state where it's like, and here's another thing you can't do anything about, and here's another thing you can't do anything about. Here's another one, and I was like, right, okay, look, I know what's, because you need to be like awakened that there are big problems in the world. You need to know that, but once you know it, I feel like, okay, right, now let's put that to the side and just focus on the bit. I love this phrase. It's like tend to the part of the garden you can touch. Because the world is comprised of 7 billion different pieces, and I have total autonomous control over one of them, and a few others I can influence. Right, start that, because those people that you influence also have complete autonomous control over themselves and another sphere of influence themselves, and on and on and on. And instead of turning away, like, you know, here's what you're fighting. I suppose this is another thing that I wanted to, like, I'm also trying to think, you know, when I was talking about ending, like, the battle of good and evil, instead of thinking, now we must fight the evil, whatever the evil is, instead of thinking what you don't want, just work to build what you do want, rather than just this kind of oppositional mindset, because that just creates, you know, I just felt like, you know, all that's going to happen is we're just going to have it's going to be another cycle of there are these two sides, one side beats the other, then there's another side opposes them, and then that side beats this side. It's just this endless, you'll just continue to exist in this low hum of, you know, realpolitik and, you know, the grim sort of, you know, even if there's a full-blown revolution, if it's not, you're still building off that same mindset. I mean, there's a lot of native philosophers that were giving a critique of Marxism, for instance, and saying, look, as far as we're concerned, Marxism, capitalism, all right, you know, Marxism might be slightly better, but like, it's still the same thing, because you're still viewing things as material, as labor, as this and that. You know, and rather than just reorganizing the building as it stands, we need a new building.
Yeah. Everything you're saying, literally. Because there's literally like all these different points. So you talked about influence. What was that phrase again? What was that phrase?
Tend to the part of the garden you can touch.
Tend to the part of the garden you can touch.
Yeah.
I've never heard that phrase before.
Really?
No.
Ah. Well, you're welcome.
It's tend to the part.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna bookmark that. I'm gonna search that. I'm gonna research that in a bit.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it. I heard it on the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast.
I see. I got time for Duncan Trussell. I like that guy. Yeah. In terms of influence, that's the thing, because, and you talk about this, you know, the new building as well. We're dominated by division, in the sense that, you know, this dichotomy, good and evil, this constant war. This the war rages on endlessly, and the news really just broadcasts who's dying. And it's I think when we talk about this new building, when we talk about this new age of unity, this new age of, I suppose, a reformulation of intellectual thought, a new age of perseverance, of working towards real human ideals, not just ideologies or ideologies in the purest state, real human ideals, right? I think about I'm the kind of guy where it's like, I'm an idealist through and through.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Straight up. It's like,
I think...
start with the idea. Get the idea. Like, don't try and mitigate or undermine your own capacity by trying to understand what's empirically possible. Start with what's impossible and then make your way there. Take it from there. And for me, this new building that you speak of, is not founded upon power. It's not founded upon oppression. It's not founded upon segregation. It's not founded upon division. It's not founded by I'm good, they're evil. It's founded upon influence. I don't want power. I don't even want to be famous. The idea of being famous is like, oh God, no, please.
Can't even go to Tesco's.
You know what I mean? I've been really appreciating my anonymity at the moment, because there will become one point where your recognition will become uncontrollable, and we have, as you say, complete autonomous control over ourselves. But fame completely it confiscates your ability to control,
because you're constant.
Your recognition.
Yeah, because you're not just you now. You're you and the you that everyone else sees.
Exactly. And that you that everyone else sees, more often than not, surpasses the you that you usually are. And it's heralded, well, in worst case scenarios, it's heralded as a form of deity. And I don't want that. What I want, I mean, it may be something that happens along the way, which I don't want, but what I do want is influence, in the sense that to create this new building, which is founded upon real human ideals. For me, these human ideals are inherently biblical in terms of forgiveness, in terms of turning the other cheek, in terms of peace, in terms of love, in terms of joy, found in a relationship with God. And this isn't me going around throwing Bibles at everyone's head. It's me saying, look, peace is not found in that zoot you're about to smoke, or that drink you're about to have, or this relationship, or this or that. And I'm not judging anyone, but this is I've gone through this. I've gone through this. I've danced that dance, bro. I've danced that dance, and peace was nowhere to be found. And the only time I found peace is when I gave it all to God. And so for me, that new building is really dependent upon us searching for that dream, searching and developing that relationship with God, because through that peace is so... We are mortal, but that peace is immortal. And when God tells us that we'll never die, that's what he's talking about. That peace that outlives us all, that becomes ossified in a legacy. That legacy, for me, literally is a building. It's an artistic organization, which I'd love to found one day, which I will found one day. Pardon me.
I'd be interested to hear more about that.
Bro, well, and this is where influence comes in. This is where the new building comes in. This is where, I mean, it's an organization, but it's an artistic organization dedicated to breaking color, which through God's grace will reverberate and will really begin to draw the blueprint of who we could be. Now, this organization, I don't want to give the name away, but ultimately it's a production company which really endorses, facilitates, and creates artistic work ultimately. But for me, it's a charity. It's about what does it mean to heal through art, and it's an organization which champions that. I think for me, and this is in terms of my relationship with healing and God, for the past 8 years, almost 9 years ago now, I lost my oldest brother, and he passed away due to sepsis, and it was an attempted suicide. And a week later, it was diagnosed with sepsis. He passed away. And so when there was a lot of time where I was thinking, I felt that God owed me something. He owed me an explanation. And because I never got one, I ended up dancing that dance, you know? It was only within the past 2 years where, instead of seeking an explanation for this tragedy from God, I looked at the past. I looked at who my brother was. I looked at who we all are. And I realized that we don't require an explanation from God to heal. All we require is trust that healing is found through God. And once I invested everything into that, once I invested my heart and soul into that, I started to witness things beyond my comprehension, beyond my rational capacities, which only affirmed the notion that Jesus walked this earth. And now that I subscribe to that wholeheartedly, this organization is really about, it's about me trying to heal outside of the art, because I don't want this to become a monument to unresolved trauma. But at the same time, I want it to be something where I look at it and I think, love is possible. Healing is possible. Anything is possible. And if we commit ourselves to our becoming, if we commit ourselves to these journeys and we find peace and forgiveness and acceptance in these journeys, not only can we find peace within ourselves, but we can create art which can completely transcend our notions of what it means to be alive. And I haven't got much more than that on the topic, but
do you need more? That sounds like a lovely.
no, I really don't.
I'm very sorry to hear that story. I'm you know, I hope that you and your family will be all right.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think what you were saying, it kind of chimed with me. I remembered a quote from David Lynch, who's an artist I've become a little bit obsessed with over the lockdown. He was talking about transcendental meditation, but I think it kind of relates just in any sort of capacity. He was describing, you know, that when you transcend, it's like, you know, you access a light within yourself, and as a result, just as a natural result of that, darkness recedes and you begin to illuminate the people around you. You know, just I mean, again, and this is what I find, really, this is what I've been attracted to very recently, the idea that actually there isn't even a trying, there isn't even an exertion of effort in this, because it was like in the old story of Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, meeting Confucius, and Confucius was going on about, you know, duty and morals and obligations towards, you know, one's fellow man and all these rules and that. And Lao Tzu said, "What you're talking about is rubbish. You're just bringing nothing but confusion to the land. Look at those trees. They grow straight, uniformly. They all grow perfectly straight. No one tells them to do that. The birds in the sky, they fly in a perfect V formation. No one's commanding them. Naturally, things flow in a certain way." And the thing I'm fascinated with the idea is that if we allow ourselves to be present, we get commands. We get, well, not even commands, just instincts. As I was talking about with the bee and pollinating, we just get instincts about what needs to be done, and whatever that is, whether it's becoming a climate activist, whether it's becoming an artist, whether it's becoming a politician, or you know, or whatever, you get those intuitions, and by doing that, things, you know, you're expanding, you're expanding your light, you're influencing others, and building something better just by almost effortlessly. And I suppose that's kind of what I wanted to dovetail in. You know, how has art? I suppose this would be like the final question, the final topic. How does art work for you in terms of healing, in terms of growing, in terms of creating a better world?
Just before I answer that, I just wanted to chime in that for me, that instinct, that gut instinct, that sensation that swells at the pit of our soul, that's God right there.
That's God.
And, whether we know it or not, that's that right there. In terms of what art is for me, this function of healing, you know, how do I want to, you know, use that to catalyze these processes? The there are certain plays, certain pieces. I'm about to start doing a master's in advanced theatre practice, which I mentioned earlier. And of all the courses out there, you know, advanced theatre practice, I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. Because it's me trying to figure out, you know, how far can I take this? Without, like, not necessarily to offend anyone or to repulse anyone, but like, how can I turn art into this function? How do I talk that talk and walk that walk? That's why I chose that one. I didn't choose any other courses, it's just that one. And so for me, but at a glance, you know, my standpoint is to create stories. It's really just about being so diligent and so attentive to human encounters, interactions, language, dialogue, gesture, movement, all this, all that, creating a catalogue of real experiences. So I'm always taking notes down. I eavesdrop on conversations. You can eavesdrop on mine, I don't care. Eavesdrop, I do everything. I'm always taking these notes down. And it's about creating these realms, these ideas, these immersive experiences where you witness it, and through witnessing, you experience something, you experience instinct, impulse. It's almost as if the art I want to create is an evocation of God's voice, to the point where you listen to it, you watch it, and you can hear, you can feel something within yourself saying, this is where I should be going. So you witness a piece of art and you see someone's particular plight. They say something that you said. They do something that you've done. They feel something that you felt. And there is that moment of connection, that seamless, fluid moment of you seeing yourself depicted, not only in an artistic light, but a truthful light. You are seeing yourself depicted as the way God intended on stage. And you resonate with that to the point where you think, damn, that's me right there. And when you leave that stage and you've got lighting and you've got all these different elements to enhance that moment of reckoning, and when you leave that audience, you are walking out not only changed, but spoken to by God themselves within yourself. And you're thinking, right. And you don't have to say anything. You don't walk out of there and say, oh, that was so good. Oh, the set was so amazing. Oh, the performance. You just walk out and you sit on a bus on the way home and you think,
And you just know.
And you just know. And over the weeks and months, it may not be immediate, but over the weeks and months, you will see patterns, you will see moments. And then you have that flashback where you're in some kind of particular circumstance and the piece of art runs back to you and you think, oh.
This
and
is
then
that.
You turn left.
It's that moment.
Right. It's that moment. And that's where, and it's not me saying, I'm going to save your life. It's more a thing of you witnessing a piece of art. And years have gone by, and you think to yourself, who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be? What could I be doing? And you see yourself in the play of the piece, and you think, that's where I was. That's where I am. And whether the character in the play meets a tragic end or a successful end, you think, that's where I want to be, or that's where I want to avoid. And you go on that journey, and the piece of art facilitates your own process of self-actualization. And for me, that's what it means to heal through art. You experience something which accommodates an encounter with yourself to the extent that you can let go of the past and embark on a new future.
God, yeah. Because, like, imagine what it would be like if we had no stories or anything like that. We would just be doing the exact same shit over and over again. I mean, we, like, you know, historically speaking, many things do repeat themselves, but at the same time, we wouldn't have the vocabulary to describe that. Do you know what? I've had so many encounters. I watched, I think probably one of the most influential pieces of art I've ever experienced was the film Blade Runner.
Ooh, I need to see it.
It's very good. Well, yeah, it's got its problems, but I love the atmosphere. I love the setting. I love the mood, and it captured something that until that point I had no way of describing. These feelings of alienation, of feeling, you know, detached from not only from, you know, the world but myself, and you know, these kind of this dark this whole dark underbelly to myself that I hadn't even been able to fully process. I saw it and I recognized it, and for like, it was such a powerful work of magic. So I always say art is magic. It's like true magic, and it was such a powerful spell that I was able to you know, everywhere I went, I saw Blade Runner. Everywhere, you know, every street corner, every rainy day, it was all Blade Runner, and it was all I could see or hear, and it became the inspiration for my own novel, and then it got infused with other pieces, and you know, The Breakfast Club. I mean, watching The Breakfast Club, I'm literally just looking up at my DVD shelf, seeing like a catalogue of all the miracles. The Breakfast Club was just like. It was just like a year's worth of therapy for like secondary school in a day, and you know, just moments of catharsis, of breathing. And the best thing about it, this is the thing that I'm so enthused by. No artist really knows what they're doing. No, like, that's no insult. That's no insult. But no artist.
No. It's interesting. No, I completely agree. Because
no artist truly can comprehend the scale of the thing that they're doing. For some of them, it might just be they're writing a silly story about, I don't know, a frog who sat on a mat or something. That's a weird story. But they're just writing they're just writing a random, you know, they're just writing, you know, something that they would like to read or something that they would like to see or whatever. And then, out of nowhere, it just, you know, you put it out into the world, and it just starts chains. It starts reactions. It snowballs, and that's, you know, that's the bee. That's the bee pollinating the flower without even knowing it. And yeah, and that's what really, you know, astounds me, because, you know, I find one of the main problems that you may encounter as an artist is when you do develop a social conscience, you start to think, I want to make art to improve the world, but then you just start doing it in the most crude, like clumsy way possible, where you just start writing plays about topical subjects. Not that there's anything wrong about plays about topical subjects if they're done well, but you can end up just making a very dry piece of work, whereas, you know, you don't even need that. You can do it if that's what really speaks to you, then do it. But just even the, you know, again, because of the mechanistic view, we've kind of lost the because, you know, we've kind of become like, oh well, if I want to make a story to address this, and then I must take XY steps to go about it in that way. Just break down the binary, break it down, and just become a vector for whatever. Just, you know, go mental, go nuts. Don't be ashamed to be crazy. Don't be ashamed to just tell whatever story is the most impactful to you, because that's the story that you're meant to tell. That's what, to use this word, God, the universe, or fate, or, you know, the immateria, whatever. That's what it's compelling you to do.
And it's beautiful you say that, because I did a workshop, Theatre 503 writing workshop, lady called Gurpreet Bharti, I think her name is. And the workshop was on being fearless, and she wrote this play, you know, about these, you know, really, I think it was about sexual assault or homosexuality within a mosque, or these actions taking place at the mosque. And, you know, it incited such hatred, death threats, you know, people, you know, really rallying up against her in hatred. And she knew that she had to tell that story. You know, she knew that if anything, having that fear of the story was the impetus for telling that story, because the fear was an indicator that you have been the designated artist to bring this story into the light. You've been designated. And there's a lot of that, you know, because we don't want to tell these stories. I mean, we don't want death threats, but we don't want to be alone. We don't want to rule ourselves exempt from the pattern of this world because of the stories that we tell. And it's and I think when we talk about God, when we talk about that fear, and even that poem, you know, which I started off with, the terror, falling in love with the terror. falling in love with the terror is really me saying I am beginning to embrace the fact that in telling these stories, in risking rejection and risking all of these things, I am embodying and honoring my purpose as an artist. And that's God designating me to tell these stories, to go nuts, to go mental, to push the medium to its absolute limit through this masters, and to come back and to make work, which will probably make people stand up and point their fingers at me and say, how dare you? And I'll say, I had to, so that you could stand up and swear at me, because this had to happen. Because if this didn't happen, it would be a disservice to my purpose, and it would be a disservice to yours. And the bravery that we accumulate, and the honor that there is so much honor and so much grace in serving our divine function. So much honor. And I think that creating this art and really stepping to the plate, being fearless, challenging ourselves, it's not only is it our service or our duty to God's dream of us all, but it is at the same time, to put it bluntly, it's a lot of fun to just be who you're meant to be.
Yeah. Oh God, I have experienced such terror writing. The story that I sent you, the rich and luxurious aroma of Mole's premium blend coffee, story about two people trapped in a coffee advert for all eternity. I was simultaneously so scared to write it because there was so much there was so much viscera in it. There was a lot that was very potent and powerful. I feel
I loved it.
in my own.
I loved it.
Thank you. In my own sort of gut. I don't know whether it translated to other readers, but for me it was such a personal. There was so much that I was just excising, and and at the same time, I've never had so much fun writing anything in my life. Every day I was waking up, I was like, yes, I'm going to write another bit. And it was just spewing out of me. And it was, I've been trying to recapture that ever since, inventing whole new methods that I'm dying to try out. Just to have that level of just, spontaneity and power. There was, something primal about it.
And it's amazing because that excitement that you felt, I get to write another bit. That was like me. I was doing a play back in July, and I was waking up. I remember kind of just doing, because it was my first time I'd been casted as a lead in a play, and it wasn't about me like, oh, I'm the big man. It was more a thing of like, I get this chance to like just relish in this character, this role, to really make the most out of this. I remember telling my girlfriend like, this is one of the best days I've ever had in my life, and it's that. And I think, going back to my prior definition of art being an expression of excellence, you don't have to be a painter or a musician to be an artist. Scientists are artists, teachers are artists, engineers. These are all forms of art. Politics. If you pursue excellence, if you create expressions of excellence, that can be in any field, any medium, any science. I think ultimately, artistry is I suppose it is a rational way of categorizing our humanity. It's like, we're humans, we're Homo sapien, we're this, we're that. Oh, we're artists. Like, that is ultimately, when we cut down to the crux of who we are, who we're meant to be, we are all dabbling and sharing in the shared experience of creation. I feel like God is that common denominator which is compelling us, acting as that impetus, acting as that instinct to drive us towards these human ideals of, imagine what the world would be like if we just had the humility to look each other in the eye and say, I forgive you. You know how much peace, how much light there would be in the world if we were able to just look each other in the eye and say, I forgive you. And embody the actions which accompany that statement.
Just to drop all those resentments that you build up over the years. Just to, just let go.
And it's terrifying because, believe it or not, a lot of us the majority of us are walking around defined by everything that we hate in this world, defined by traumatic experiences. Like, we have walked around and we say, this has happened to me, or that's happened to me. So now I think this and I think that. And we can't let that go, because to let that go is not only to forgive whoever inflicted this pain, but it is also to encounter that inner child which we have deliberately silenced, because to hear their voice is far too painful. And so we're just running around in this trauma exchange, acting as if we're not wounded and wounding each other in the process. And it's and I always look at this image of the cross, right? Jesus died on the cross. And it's like, Jesus died for our sins, forgiveness. What do you mean? What do you mean, bro? What do you mean you died on the cross? Wagwan. What he's saying is that it's like, I died so that you could believe in me. I died so that you could believe that I died and came back so that you could believe that anything was possible. And I think the moment I really invested my heart and soul into that notion, where it's like, you have already been forgiven. All I require you to do is to believe that you've been forgiven. In believing in me and believing in that sacrifice. And so when I was embarking on these paths, from protests to artistic endeavors, to even us having this conversation, you know what I mean? It was, I'm in love with Jesus, man. I'm in love with Jesus and everything that he's done for me. I'm in love with God and everything that they've done for me. And I'm in love with myself for trusting God and Jesus to that point. And all I know is that I don't think that I used to see my art as a cross that I had to die on, which was a very toxic way to go about it. But now I'm beginning to, to separate the crosses from the mountains. What do I leave behind and stick in the sand? What do I climb up to so I can see what's beyond? And going to the Peak District, walking up those hills and gazing into the beauty that was laid before me by God himself. I just thought, through God, anything's possible. Through God, forgiveness is possible. Art is possible. Life is possible. Love is possible. And that's why I come back to art, God, healing. That's my Trinity. That's my Trinity. You know what I mean? Art, God, healing. And there is just this beautiful interplay of creation and destruction and reclamation, and all woven within this Trinity. And
everything is divine.
Everything is divine, and that's what I want my organization to be founded upon. That's what I want my work. That's what I want my legacy to be founded upon, bro. I don't want fame. I don't want Instagram likes. All I want is for us to find peace in God. That's all I want. Whether in that relationship with God that we find is inherently personal, but if my art can facilitate that personal journey.
Well, I'd like that on Instagram. Well, I think that's and that's where I think I'm going to stop that recording.
Hey.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So where can we find you?
Instagram. I've got 3 photos and none of them are pictures of me. Patrick Bayele. I'll try and follow you back, but Instagram scares me. You can have me on Facebook. I'm pretty open-minded.
Okay.
I don't use Twitter anymore.
Is there anything you want to point the listeners in the direction of?
Instagram. I'm going to start using Instagram more often.
Right.
Follow me on Instagram, Patrick Bayele Instagram. I will follow you back. I will. I promise.
Right. Fantastic. Okay. That concludes this episode, and I will stop recording now. That was Patrick Bayele, everyone. Wow. What a talk. What a guy. Once again, if you're interested in following him, you can follow at Patrick Bayele on Instagram. That's PatrickBayele. And yes, if you're watching this on YouTube, I know I've spelt his name wrong in the thumbnail. I'm sorry. By the time I realised it, it was too late, and all my editing software's kind of gone up the blink, so I'm sorry. It's Patrick with a CK, if there is any other version of it being spelt. Anyway, thank you to Patrick once more, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.